Hello everyone! I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're reviewing a short story that was written by Fritz Leiber. It's in this collection, Lankhmar, that publishes a few of the books that are in the Lankhmar series, sporting the two thieves, the Gray Mouser and Fafhrd. This is the second short story in this that I'm going back and rereading for you folks. It's called The Unholy Grail. It's about 34 pages. I read it last night in about 55 minutes. As a reminder, Fritz Leiber is a big name in fantasy and science fiction. He also wrote some horror stuff, too. So he's done all three genres that I review for my channel. He's won a lot of Hugos. In fact, this series that we're reviewing for you folks has some Hugo Award-winning stuff in it, too. He's a hugely award-winning, but this guy did not make all the monies. He was definitely in an impoverished state for pretty much all of his career. For example, one science fiction writer talks about visiting his home and saw that he had set up his workstation. He didn't even have a separate study. He couldn't afford it. He was working out on the kitchen table in his kitchen. And that science fiction reporter reported on that and so forth. So this is a guy who wrote a lot of stuff throughout his era. He started in the pulp era. He was somebody who wrote letters with H.P. Lovecraft and was part of the Lovecraft circle. But his first short story, Two-Sided Adventure, was not published until after Lovecraft's death. He will publish some short stories in the Cthulhu mythos, and we've reviewed one of those for you already for this channel. For you folks. He has published in this series, the Gray Mouser and Fafhrd, Lankhmar series, a lot of short stories and novellas over time for decades and decades. And these are two people that are pre Gary Gygax's Dungeons and Dragons that definitely had a huge impact on modern fantasy through that. For example, in Appendix N, the first edition's Dungeons & Masters Guide, Gary Gygax lists all the influences on Dungeons & Dragons, and therefore through that modern fantasy, which all modern fantasy has sort of followed that suit. And he lists Fritz Leiber as one of the key influences in that. So, for example, the Thieves Guild idea and what that looks like in a major city is definitely something that modern fantasy has taken a look from. So, if your modern fantasy has a Thieves Guild in it, that comes from Fritz Leiber. Similarly, if it's a huge city like Lankhmar, that also is something that we will see huge cities later on. This actually wasn't the case earlier on, right? In fantasy. So this is also another aspect, Lankhmar itself. The city. Anyway. That's definitely some of his influences then, and some of the things, and he's also a Hugo Award winner that was started publishing during the pulp era, and he will be publishing for decades and decades different works for you folks. So I have reviewed some short stories in the in this collection for you folks, or the other books that I here and there over time. I used to review things that I'd only read once earlier in this channel. But what I've been doing more recently is not reviewing things that I only read once or read years ago, but only something that I've recently read. So if I've already read it once, then I go back and I reread it. I've been doing that for the last couple of years or so. So I haven't read anything because I haven't gone back and reread them. So now we're reading the second short story. So I've gone back and rereading this now, which I haven't read in probably 20 years. And I only read it once. I'm going back and reading this now. The first one in the novella, The Snow Women, I just reviewed for you folks. And now reviewing this short story, which took me less than an hour for me to knock it out last night for the second time, The Unholy Grail. Now, the first short story was a novella. I had to read it across 2 days. It was about 86 pages long. It took me about 2 hours and 40 minutes for me to knock it out over those 2 days. So I have not reviewed The Snow Woman. The Snow Woman introduces the character of Fafhrd, who definitely is influenced by Conan the Barbarian. He's a northern barbarian tribe person. He's younger. He's definitely somebody who's a little jaded at times, innocent at times. He's younger, still filling himself out at times, and he's going to become a thief. And Conan, if you recall, is actually a thief too, even though he's a barbarian. And so he's going to become a thief too. If you'll recall. So he's definitely inspired by that, and the Snow Woman introduces him, his culture, and so forth, and ultimately will send him down to the south. And that is the one I reviewed for you, that I reviewed yesterday. Although you'll get it a week later, because I publish my reviews of these collections one every week of 1 to 3 days that I review. So you're getting this a week later, but I reviewed it yesterday. So today I'm reviewing the introduction of the Gray Mouser, the smaller, smarter, seedier of the two, and he is an apprentice for a hedge wizard who's a good guy. So anyway, so the Gray Mouser is introduced in this short story as he's arriving back home, and he sees that there's something wrong with the house that he and his master live in, and so forth. And so he ends up trying to take a look around. He sees his master's dead, and so he's thrown, and he leaves very, very quickly thereafter. And then what will happen next after his master's death, whom he thinks is invincible, but he's actually just a hedge wizard by the rest of the world. But he's a good guy, and he tried to push Gray Mouser towards being good, but we'll find out later on that he realized that the Gray Mouser actually has some evil aspects to him. And so forth. So anyway, we'll also introduce to another main character, if you will, a second point of view character. In addition to the Gray Mouser, is his love interest, the daughter of the nearby Duke, and she's also a main character too. And there will be some parts of the story that will be told from her viewpoint. She's not just an antagonist; she's a point of view character. Some of the sections will end with Gray Mouser, and then the next section will begin. And it has section breaks in it, and that sort of a thing. So now we're going to be introduced into the Gray Mouser. Now, the Gray Mouser starts out as a wizard apprentice, so he knows wizardry and so forth. By the end of this, he'll be strong enough to be more of a fighter. It's like he takes a couple levels in fighter. If you'll use modern Dungeons and Dragons speak of people who take multiple levels, different classes, and so forth, but he'll always still have that sort of an apprentice to a wizard sort of an aspect to him, if you will. So anyway, so there you are. Again, I keep my reviews spoiler free, so I'm not going to tell you too much of what happens if in this case, in case you haven't read it yet. I'll try to link you to this collection in the comments below in case you read it. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10, but more of an 8 minus, so like a 7.8 or 7.9 that I'm running up to an 8. Rather than a proper 8, like I gave the Snow Woman. So anyway, that is the Unholy Grail by Fritz Leiber, one of the most influential writers in the genres of horror, science fiction, and fantasy. Anyway, so there you are. Have you read it? If so, what'd you think about it? Did you agree or disagree with my 8 minus? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. The next short story in this self-titled collection, Ilmet and Lankhmar, is Ilmet and Lankhmar, which I've already reviewed for you folks. So that's it. I won't do another review of this one. I'll read it, and then I'll knock out the next one. So it'll be a few days between my review of this and then the next one for you folks. As a reminder, the name of this channel, The Worst Thing About New Books, is a quote by a French philosopher named Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books was that they kept us from reading the old ones. And this older set of classics that were published decades ago is definitely a set of things that are heavily influential, and definitely I think a lot of people need to be caught up on, so it's a passion of mine. So anyway, there you are. I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing in watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, right? And we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.